I don't think there's anything that you'll find that more perfectly captures where we were, what happened to us from the Great Depression, the stock market crash in 1929. Herb drew all the events of that period right up till 2 weeks before 9/11, the whole range of history.
Herblock fits our mission of the Library of Congress because we're trying to document American creativity and American history. And what could be more central to that mission than images? There are 82 original drawings in the exhibition, 3 of which come from the Washington Post collection, and the rest come from the 14,460 original drawings in the Prints and Photographs division.
As time has gone on, some papers, both editorially and or with the editorial cartoon, have allowed that position to grow a certain amount of editorial independence. That's certainly the case at the Washington Post. I mean, the tradition that Herblock worked in was very much that he was his own commentator, he was his own center of opinion and analysis, and that is the way that you get really great political cartooning, and he certainly took advantage of it.
Ben Bradley hired me to go to the Post in 1969, and Herb and I became extremely close. And every day around 5 o'clock, the deadline for a paper is after 6, Herb would appear in the doorway. He'd stand there with this aw shucks diffident manner. He'd say, "Hey, you got a mow?" And in his hands he would have 5 different little rough pieces of paper. Each one was a drawing for a cartoon for the next day. And he'd come kind of shuffling into my office, and he'd sort of parcel them out like playing cards. And you were honored if he would ask your opinion. And he honored because you would tell him candidly, this one no, that one yes, that one no. And then he would go back and put the sketch on. That would be the next morning's cartoon. And he had this incredible freedom to do what he wanted to do. That's so rare for reporters, editors, anybody else. He had a carte blanche, and he exercised it brilliantly.
Look at that beautiful 1970 cartoon drawn a mere 6 days after the Watergate break-in. Here is a moment when you understand that Herblock was a real journalist. He wasn't using text. He was using pictorial depictions to do what Woodward and Bernstein couldn't do, and that was to point a finger directly at Nixon days after the Watergate break-in. And Katharine Graham saw that cartoon as he was about to take it down to the photo engravers, and she said, "You're not going to run that, are you?" And he had such independence at that point. He had an authorial voice that she didn't feel that she could prevent him from doing what he wanted to do.
The other cartoons, I think, the other periods that he evoked history that will be remembered is Joe McCarthy. From the very beginning, went after Joe McCarthy because he was violating civil liberties, he was abusing people, he was affecting the country, he was setting a scare. There's one cartoon in particular that Herb did just a few days after McCarthy entered the public stage. There's a Republican warily being pushed by Republican leaders like this, and the Republicans looking back toward a whole 10 tar buckets with tar losing out and tar buckets on the top. And the elephant says, "You mean I have to stand on that?" And the top, very top bucket was named McCarthyism. He had named an era that's now a part of the language. It's in the dictionaries, and just a few days. That's the kind of insight, prescience that Herb had to call the turn on events. It's an incredible thing.
He was able to look at events in time, like, for example, January industrial curve. That cartoon could be drawn today. You could have the executives of AIG and other failed corporations lining up to the White House, just as they did during the Great Depression.
Well, if you look at what Herb started drawing on terrorism, going back to the Ayatollah, Khomeini, the capturing of hostages in America, and from then on for another generation, what we now have of the suicide bombers, all this, he captured that in a way that's absolutely magnificent and terrifying to see it. It didn't begin with 9/11. It started way before that, and he captures the zealotry, the hatred, the monstrosity of it.
The few times I met him, he seemed astonishingly and surprisingly sweet-tempered for the amount of hard-hitting work he did. And I sort of had a theory that he got all the venom in his system out through his work, and there was nothing left in his persona but sweetness.
Cartoons have a means of getting to that neglected moment in time that we've all forgotten. The daily message of Herblock was about something that was essential, a truth.
Not only 13 presidents, starting with Herbert Hoover all the way to George W. Bush, but it went all the way, and you see them, they're all there. So if you have any questions about what it was like to live there, these evoke that time, a time of great change in the world, a time of tragedy, of trauma, of triumph, and Herb's work is indelible. I just hope everybody will look back on it and learn from it and say, wow, isn't that something?